You know, a movie theater, it's supposed to be a place of escape, right? A place where you can get lost in a story. But on one summer night back in 2012, that feeling of safety was just completely shattered. This is our explainer on the Aurora, Colorado theater shooting. We're going to break down what happened, take a look at the mind of the person responsible, and talk about the long shadow it cast over a community and really the entire nation.
So let's set the scene. The date was July 20th, 2012. It seemed like just another summer night in a suburb of Denver, but it would end as a tragedy that sent shockwaves across the country.
Inside the Century 16 multiplex, the energy was electric. Hundreds of people were packed in for a midnight screening of the new Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, this was a huge deal. You had fans dressed in costume, everyone was buzzing, just ready for a night of pure blockbuster entertainment.
About 30 minutes into the movie, the line between the action on screen and reality it blurred into an absolute nightmare. That theater, a place that was supposed to be about shared joy, suddenly became a scene of unbelievable terror and violence.
So to really understand what happened, we need to look at the exact sequence of events inside Theater 9 that night.
Now, this wasn't some spontaneous act of violence. No, this was a planned, orchestrated attack. The shooter, he actually blended right in at first. He bought a ticket, walked in with the rest of the crowd. Then he quietly slipped out a back emergency exit that he'd propped open, and when he came back, he was transformed. He was covered, head to toe, in tactical gear. First he threw tear gas canisters, filling the dark theater with smoke and panic, and then he opened fire.
In the chaos that followed, 12 people lost their lives. The victims were all different ages, and they included a little 6-year-old girl named Veronica Moser Sullivan. She was just there for a special night out at the movies.
And beyond the 12 who were killed, another 70 people were injured, some by gunfire, others in the mad scramble to escape. You have to remember, at that time, this was the largest mass shooting in American history when you count the total number of people hurt.
The attack was chillingly planned out, and to even begin to understand why it happened, we have to look at the person who put it all together.
The shooter's name was James Holmes. He was 24 years old, and he'd been a PhD student in a highly competitive neuroscience program at the University of Colorado. But his life had just taken a sharp downward turn. He'd recently failed a key exam and dropped out of the program.
The level of premeditation here is it's hard to wrap your head around. For months, he legally bought 4 guns and stockpiled over 6,000 rounds of ammunition. Just hours before the attack, he mailed a notebook filled with his violent plans to his university psychiatrist. And it wasn't just the theater. His own apartment was a death trap, booby-trapped with explosives designed to kill the first responders who would inevitably show up.
All of this preparation led to the central question of his trial. Was this calculated evil, or was it a mind that had completely unraveled? The prosecution argued he was a methodical killer seeking fame and notoriety. But his defense team? They claimed he was in the middle of a psychotic break, suffering from severe schizophrenia that made him legally insane. This question would be the absolute focal point of the entire legal battle.
The attack itself was over in just minutes, but the search for justice, well, that was just beginning, and it all came down to this one critical question. Was James Holmes legally sane when he pulled the trigger?
So Holmes pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The prosecution pointed to all that meticulous planning as proof that he knew exactly what he was doing and that it was wrong. The defense, on the other hand, presented evidence of severe schizophrenia of delusions. But the real turning point was the testimony from court-appointed psychiatrists. They all agreed, yes, Holmes was severely mentally ill. But, and this is the crucial part, under Colorado law, they believed he still understood that his actions were wrong, and that made him legally sane.
The director of the film, Christopher Nolan, I think he really captured the feeling of shock and violation that so many people felt. His words get to the heart of it. A movie theater is an innocent place. This attack was a desecration of that shared, safe space.
So after a trial that lasted nearly 3 months, filled with just harrowing testimony from survivors and incredibly complex psychiatric analysis, the jury finally came back with a decision that would seal Holmes' fate.
On July 16, 2015, the jury completely rejected the insanity defense. They found James Holmes guilty on all 165 charges against him. That included 24 counts of first-degree murder, 2 for each person killed, and 140 counts of attempted murder. The trial then moved into the penalty phase. The prosecution was pushing for the death penalty, but
the jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision. It came down to a single juror who was firmly opposed, arguing that Holmes's documented mental illness was a mitigating factor. And because of that one dissenting vote, he was spared execution.
So on August 26, 2015, the judge handed down the official sentence. Holmes received 12 consecutive life sentences, with no possibility of parole, one for each life that he took.
But that wasn't all. On top of the life sentences, the judge added another 3,318 years for the attempted murders and the explosives charges. The judge's intention was perfectly clear. He said for the record, the defendant never sets foot in free society again.
And while that closed the legal chapter, the story was far from over. The tragedy left these deep, lasting scars on the survivors, on the entire community of Aurora, and on the nation as a whole.
In the wake of the shooting, everyone grappled with how to respond. The tragedy sparked intense debates about gun control, which actually led to new laws in Colorado. Families of the victims started something called the No Notoriety campaign, trying to shift the media's focus away from the perpetrators of these crimes. The theater itself controversially reopened, but the community also came together to create a permanent memorial, a quiet space with 83 birds, one for every single person who was killed or injured that night.
The story of Aurora is one of just profound loss, but it's also a story of incredible resilience. It forces us to keep asking these really difficult questions about mental health care, access to weapons, and what we as a society choose to make famous. For the survivors, for that community, the shooting isn't just something that happened in the past. It's a permanent scar, a constant reminder of a night that changed absolutely everything.